We're going to have some fun with objects and arrays and showing you the differences between them, how you can select data, how you can update data within them. So for the object, we're going to have an object with an array that's nested within it. Within that array, it's going to be another array that's going to be nested within that array. And I'm going to show you how you can retrieve back those results and output them within the code. How we can create an array, we can nest that array within another array, make some updates to the original array or to the nested array, and have them reflected on both arrays. Also how we can create an object, nest the arrays, retrieve back the results. And we're going to be covering overall how arrays and objects behave within code and how you can retrieve the values contained within them. Let's create a brand new JS file, and we're going to create an object, and this object is going to contain multiple different types of data, and then we're going to output that data into the console and also make some updates to the data. So the first item is that we're going to add in a first name, and this is going to be a data type for a string. The second one is going to be an ID value, and this is going to be a number value. And then the third one is going to be a listing, so this is going to be an array, and using the brackets, and don't forget to comma separate it out to bring over to the next item. And if we add in another property name that's already going to be the one that we have before, what do you think is going to happen when we output this object into the console? We've got two of the same property names, and we're using the console log and outputting the object value into the console. And if you said that the first value of first is going to be overwritten by the second value that's being associated to the property name of first, you're correct. So in the end, the output is only going to be the three results. We're not going to have a second output for first, as these have to be unique, and if we do use the second time, then they're going to actually overwrite the existing value. So let's add some items into the array. So we've got the courses array, and I'll list out maybe some typical courses that I might have within the array. And I'm also going to update this back and switch it back to Laurence. So even if we do a second value where we're associating and we want to assign a new value to it, now the last time that we assign to that property name, this is where we're going to be able to output that value. If we want to retrieve the array, that's going to be using the property name of courses. So we can output that into the console, and then this is going to be an array just like any other array that we would be using. So let's select the courses object, and that outputs the array into the console and allows us to interact with the items within the array. If we want to select the first item, that's going to be using the index value of 0. The second item is going to be using the index value of 1, and so on. If we want to update these values, just as we're assigning it and just as we're retrieving the values, so using the dot notation, we're retrieving the values, we can also assign new values into it. So let's update the value of Laurence once again, and we'll set another value that's going to be associated with the property name of first. And now when we output the object into the console, that's going to have that new property name associated with it. And now we open up the object and we've got these values that are within it. We can also update and select the courses. So just like we've got over here, if we want to make an update to the course, we want to assign a new value to the property, we can then update that and output the value. So if we select the object once again within the array, we've updated the first item using its index value. So what happens if I select and if I update an index value that doesn't exist within an array? And I set this one to be HTML. What do you think is going to happen in this case? So we do only have the three items in the courses array, and they have three values there. We don't have a value for index value of 10, so that would be the 11th item in the array. So now when we select it, and if we output the object into the console, so let's write that out into the console, what do you think the result is going to be for the array? So the array has a length of 11 items, and you can see that being represented within the console. And when we open up the array, the courses has 11 items. So all of these other items are going to be blank, and the length of the array is now going to be 11. in order to return back, so arrays do come with properties, and one of the properties is going to be the length. The length tells us how many items are actually contained within the courses array. So the length property is available within each array, and you can also use and select the length property. So you can select the courses, and just as with the object, in order to retrieve back the property, we can retrieve back that number of 11 using the courses length property to get the value of it. If we set the length value of the courses, so if I was to assign a value to that property, and then if I output the object into the console, what do you think is going to happen now with the length of the items? So if we've reset it to a length of 3, and initially when we added that item, it had a length of 11. So when we look at it within the console, we've got a value of 3 within that array, and we open it up, and now we've only got 3 items. So what this effectively does within the code is this shrinks your array to only the whatever you want. For if you want the first 3 items of the array, it will remove out all other items from the array. Let's also nest within the object and within the array. I'm going to nest another array within there, and this one is going to just have some values. So 1, 2, and 3 assigned into it. And if I want to retrieve back those values, I can actually do a console clear because we've got quite a bit of stuff going on within the console. So in order to clear it using the code, you can write console clear, and that will clear out the contents of the console. So now let's retrieve back the object, and we want to retrieve back those items that are contained within the object, and that's contained within the courses array. So if we want to retrieve those items, we've got it within the array. I'm going to assign this to 4 because what was happening is we were removing out that new item that we added into the array. So we've got an array here that's contained within the courses array, and we've got a second array that's contained in there, and that uses the index value of 3. So in order to select that, we would use its index value in order to select that array. So this is the nested array that's rested in the parent array of the courses, and the courses is sitting within the object. So if we want to retrieve back one of these values, then we could select it by its index value. So we've already selected the object, we've already selected the courses, and selecting the index value from the array using 3, and now we need another index value in order to retrieve back a value that's within this nested array, and this is where we use the brackets once again, and if we want to get the first item, we use the index value of 0. Let's go ahead and we're going to create a and this is going to be an array, and within this array we'll add in some items within the array, and we can output the results of that array into the console. Now what happens if I take the object courses, and if I assign to the courses with the index value of 4, we assign that array into it. And then I list out the result for object 1. When I look at that now, within the courses, I've got 5 items within the courses, and now I've got the array nested within that original array. And the interesting thing about arrays, and this is also why we can use the const, and for those of you that are familiar with JavaScript, you know that const can't be updated. So you can't reassign a new value to this variable because we're using const, whereas with let, we can update the values. So if we have a variable and we set it to const a, and we have a value of 1, and then we take that value and we try to assign a new value to it, we're going to get an error. And that's going to tell us that we're trying to do an assignment to a constant variable. So that's where we need to use let. When we output the result of a, we're not throwing an error. It's been reassigned to that new value. But with the objects and with the arrays, we've been updating the items within there without affecting the const. So if we were to take the array and if we were to reassign to the entire variable a new value, we would throw an error there because we've already declared const. We can't redeclare it and assign a new value to it. Or if we to remove out the const, we've assigned it as and declared it as const, we're going to throw the same error. With arrays and with objects, the difference is that we're assigning the variable to a location. So this information ends up getting stored in a memory location within the browser, and that's what we're referencing. So we're not actually changing the variable the value that we're assigning to the variable, because it's assigned to a memory location, we're only assigning and updating those values that are sitting within that memory location. And now when we've created a new array, we've assigned it to this array. If we want to retrieve back values, or if we want to make updates to those values, let's try that out, where we want to select the value of 3. And the same way that we've did it over here, where we select the parent, which is the object, the courses are nested within the object, and that's the array, and we select the item using the index value. In this case, the index value would be 4. If we want to return back the item that's nested within that array with the index value of 4, that one has an index value of 2. So now within the console, we retrieve back the value of 3. Let's take this value and we're going to update that value 5. Add a new item into the array. So this one will say 6. So let's update those values. And what do you think we're going to have for the output for the object 1 when we output the contents of that? So when we go back into that array that we've just updated, and that's nested within courses, and that's nested within the item with index value of 4, we see that this array now has been updated. We've got 1, 2, 5, and 6. And the interesting thing about arrays, and another thing to keep in mind when you're using them within the code, if we select the original array, it looks like that one has been updated as well with the value of 5 and 6. And that's true because that value, that array has also been updated, because once again, we're tying these values and we're associating it to a memory location. So when we're assigning that value to object courses with the index value of 4, that's still going to be referencing that same point. And when we update items that are contained within that main point of reference, that's going to also affect the original array. So outputting the value of array 1 is going to now be updated. And correspondingly, if I take array 1 and if I update a value that's contained within it, new in there, that's going to be reflected in both of those arrays, because now that same memory location within the memory of the browser. And that's where we've got the update to the nested array as well as the update to the original array. And arrays are actually objects within JavaScript code. Try an example where we're going to create a second object and we'll nest that object within the main object. And then I'll see how we can update those values. So within this object, let's assign property name of first, and this will say hello, contain an array. So I'll contain the contents of array 1. We'll output the result of the object 2. I'll also clear the console, do a console clear. So now we've got the results for object 2 of these values. So that's where we're getting those original array values that are nested within there. So you're probably wondering, okay, well, what happens if we nest an array within an array? So you can do that as well, where we can have our array. It's not suggested to do this, but you are able to do that. So if we had an array with index of 9, and if we try to associate the array to it, it doesn't throw any errors. If we output the array, we're going to see that that array is actually contained within itself. So you can continuously go down all the levels deep, and you're going to continuously return back those nested arrays, holding that value, but it's associating it to the memory location. And so this array 1 with an index value of 9 is just referencing that original array 1, which is the same as object 2 ARR, the same as object 1 courses 4 with index value of 4 arrays. So those are all pointing to the same location. Make any updates to those, they're going to update all of them. Now, of course, you don't want to do this where you want to nest an array within itself, but it is possible. It's something that you can do. The JSON data, you're not going to be able to output this type of structure within JSON because this is going to be a continuous, and this is only available within the JavaScript arrays and objects. So go ahead and try it out to get more familiar with how you can output the results and also update some of the results within the objects and arrays. And you're going to be ready to move on to the next lesson.